Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Summer. Yes. How's it going?
Hi.
Can you see
Okay.
me?
I
Hear me?
think I can see you. So we should be good to go here.
Okay.
Just want to make sure the connection's strong enough too.
Yes, and I'm not right now, sister. I know. There's a child in the back seat. There will be moments for anyone who is invested in this. It will get interesting. My best friend Addie, who is also Miss Oklahoma, is driving the car.
Hello.
So
I love that. Look at this sisterhood.
Sisterhood is strong.
Thriving.
Yeah, but two for the price of one. She will, I'm sure, have something to contribute to this as well.
Why not? I love that. The more the merrier.
Yes, but trying to follow the law and pick up a child from daycare that I did not realize the camp was at 11:30. Camp is 2 hours long. I'm like, who has a camp?
That's not a camp.
It's not a camp.
It's not a camp.
Nevertheless, she persists.
Awesome. Well, how far away are you from that moment?
So we are about 9 minutes away from the school, and we will be parked for 20 minutes so that I will be just sitting
stationary
for 20 minutes, and then we'll pick up at 11:30, and then we will be back to the office, and then you will have an undivided attention moment for me.
I love it. Well, typically how these work is I try to get, for the sake of respecting your time, I try to get started as quickly on the dot as possible. And then people tend to just like filter in throughout the call. Like I said, it is recorded. So a lot of people will watch this after the fact. So it's not really a problem if people like pop in and out. What's more important is that we're able to get great content and answers from you and help share some wisdom, which I have no concerns that you're going to be able to provide that.
The wisdom is interesting because are we wise? Because I'm literally holding a laptop in my moving van right now.
You are.
Yeah, you've said it twice, but it's autumn. I wanted you to know before you started. Just confirm with her.
You're adaptable. That's the key here. Adaptability.
Why don't we just move on to winter? Like, why don't we just, you can call me spring. I honestly, I'm at a point where it's like, I love that we're talking about comparison today, because I had a conversation with my friend yesterday about this, where I was like, does everyone feel like they're genuinely struggling to survive? And she was like, well, you're in a season of life right now where that's more your reality than most. That's more your reality than most. And like, I don't know my husband's phone number, nor do I remember his birthday. And it's like, those are just, I've genuinely considered that maybe I just need to be put in an old folks home, and that would be fine with me.
It's okay. Work. No worries. Funnily enough, my sister's name is Summer.
Stop right now. That actually makes me smile. Then somehow I was experiencing somehow your sister, who you are. So she lives in Florida, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I remember one minor detail, and then the rest.
Okay. It's like the one moment that I got at Miss America was them making a joke about my name, and then they made like a Game of Thrones comment. That was the one moment. That was my moment. Okay.
Well, we'll talk about moments at Miss America. Addie and I have plenty of stories. We have lots of. My moment was that I was like, you know what would really convince everyone here that I should win Miss America is telling a joke for my top 5 answer to my question. That feels appropriate. That feels like the right choice. Because who wouldn't trust that woman? Good grief. Like, Anyway, so that's when it's like people are like, "Are you sad you didn't win?" No, I was 20 years old and I made a literal joke about twerking. So I think we made the right decision there.
We made the right choice.
God almighty.
Oh boy. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. Give me a second. Okay. All right. Let me make sure I'm on. Cool. I think I'm where I'm supposed to be here. Okay, so I'm actually going to start the presentation, and this is where the recording will begin.
Great. That's wonderful. Autumn. That's so great. Autumn. Love to hear that, Autumn.
You're doing awesome. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today here at She is Motivated. We are so excited to have you to talk about mindset reset and overcoming comparison. We have an amazing guest for you today. And our focus for today's session is really going to be to help you release that grip, which sometimes has her claws in real tight, of comparison, and help you to reset your mind towards self-assurance, joy, personal growth, and get to that place on your own terms. Our guest today is Kelsey Griswold. She was Miss Oklahoma 2013 and second runner-up at Miss America. We are so excited to have her with us today. She's a proud graduate of Oklahoma City University, where she earned her BFA before going on to represent her state as Miss Oklahoma and placing second runner-up at Miss America. Her career in entertainment took her to New York, Los Angeles, where she spent nearly a decade acting in film and television projects for Amazon, Netflix, Lifetime, Hallmark, NBC, CBS, and ABC. Whew, quite the accomplishments, my goodness. Now she is back in Oklahoma. Kelsey serves as the Lifelight worship leader at St. Luke's Methodist Church and was grateful to play a key role in the creative leadership of, is it Petite Theater, I believe? Yes, directing and choreographing and producing stage productions. She recently launched the podcast Roots and Rise alongside co-host Maddie Pontykes, a project born out of a shared passion for storytelling and empowerment. In addition to her artistic pursuits, she is also a licensed mortgage broker with Price Mortgage Group. Kelsey lives in Edmond with her husband, Hunter, and their two daughters, Keller and Sailor. So everybody, please welcome Kelsey. Hello.
Hi, Autumn. Thank you so much for having me. I understand that your viewers might see me in a van, in a car. But that is because as moms and working moms, we just don't quit. So we're going to continue to stay flexible today.
Absolutely. I love that you are making this work on whatever terms you have to. Miss America girls should know by this point, adaptability is a key point of the job. And
yes, and
you're doing it, you're still doing it.
A light heart about it all. Just keeping a light heart about it is just the key.
100%. Well, whether it's an office, a van, your backyard, we're glad to have you. So thank you so much. We're going to begin today just breaking down some of the goals of our session. So we've heard this before, comparison is the thief of joy, but comparison might be the thief, but self-awareness is truly the gift. So we're going to spend this time together focusing on reclaiming that and our story. Our goals here are really to help you break free from that toxic cycle of comparison and self-doubt. Discover how you can highlight your unique strengths with confidence, replace comparison with clarity, and using something called the spotlight shift to help with your reflection, and developing confidence through action, not applause, which in pageant land, that's kind of hard to do because we, I guess, kind of live for the applause in some points. I don't know. Did you ever feel that?
Well, it's funny that you say that particular statement because that was the, at the time when Miss America did Swimsuit, that was the song that we walked to, was Lady Gaga's Applause. And so it really is, I think a lot of people, especially if you're a performer at heart, pageants will play into that piece where you feel the need for the approval of your audience, of your judges, of whomever. And I think that it is really it's about mental strategy and fortitude on not allowing that to be the key piece. It's okay if it plays a role, but it definitely doesn't need to be the reason. It doesn't make sense.
100%. So, that applause, or, I kind of think plays into our next slide here with the fact that we live in the age of social media, right? Which I know for you and I, when we were competing, do we want to say how long ago? They know, 2013. It was a minute. Okay.
Yes,
But,
yes, it was.
but we didn't have, I don't feel like social media as heavily as we do now. I look at title holders and their requirements for social media, and even our listeners and what their expectations are to show up in that realm. And I feel like comparison is so much easier. I remember not really knowing what a lot of the girls I was going to compete with at Miss America were up to, because you didn't have access to that information and it wasn't heavily shared. You went to Miss America a few years before me. So what was that like for you?
It was wildly, wildly different than it is now, because I'm dear friends with the Miss Oklahoma who just gave up her crown, Lauren Frost, and it was very encouraged to know the outgoing Miss America. It was encouraged to discuss to have conversation with the girls prior to arrival, and it was very encouraged to have your phone with you during the competition. It was quite literally the exact opposite. Mallory Hagan, who was the outgoing Miss America while I was competing, she was one of the first Miss Americas to call the contestants to connect with them. That was an earth-shattering experience for me. Like I genuinely had a panic attack, and we talked for like an hour. I mean, is so special. But at the same time, I mean, that was just the times, and social media was highly analyzed, and anything that could be taken negatively was stripped. I mean, you almost were better off not having social media at all than having a page of any kind. And then at the time I competed, Addie and I, Addie's here, Addie Price, hi everybody, it was Miss Oklahoma 2019 and 2020. We both, I would say, came up in the teen system where you really had to be careful about what you were portraying and who you were portraying yourself to be, because you're a role model. Now it's like you really can't go a day without posting, and it has to be, there's this part about branding that I'm so just the last person to know what that even looks like. The only thing I would be able to contribute as far as social media is the people that I see that are unbelievably successful are those who are just genuinely who they are, unapologetically who they are. And the girl who wins, I've just seen this time and time again, especially on the state level, the girl who's just unapologetically who she is, it's really hard to look away from that girl. It's really hard to not want your daughters and your children to look up to a person who just is super comfortable in their own skin. So I think that's the only advice I would ever give on social media, is just, if it's you can't go wrong, because you can always back yourself up at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And you see it time and time again with the girls that are winning and showing up as themselves. Now, we did highlight the fact that social media was very different for us, but I think even, present day, you still utilize social media. You can understand how comparison seeps in, just as being a mom, as being everyday Kelsey. So I want you to think back to, knowing what you know now about how easy it is to compare lives, and then think back to where you were at that time. Did you find yourself in 2013 comparing yourself to other girls you were competing with?
Oh, of course. I mean, my goodness, at 20 years old, can you even imagine walking in and just having like unbridled? Now, there is this part of me that does have unbridled confidence. There is this part of me that's like, well, I'm a 10. But then also there's another part of me that's like, you're in a room full of 11s. Like, I'm a 10. There's a bunch of 12s here. And I'm like, well, that's great. And I tell this story over and over and over again. I never get tired of this story. But I was competing for Miss Oklahoma. It was my first year. And that my one of my best friends, Alex Epler Williams, who I ended up crowning Miss Oklahoma. I mean, it was her fifth something year to compete. And I was like, that's Miss Oklahoma. So I should be super respectful. Like, she's going to win. So like, I need to be really respectful. I mean, the comparison wasn't even she's better than me. It was just that she's Miss Oklahoma. It was, and I think the mentality, and you touch on this in your further, in the presentation here, is that I think that you can really do yourself a service when you consider that there are multiple winners in your group. And the year that I competed at the state level, there were 4 Miss Oklahomas in my top 5.
Wow.
There were 4 girls who ended up going on to become Miss Oklahoma in my top 5. So at that point, really the mentality should be for anyone, like, you're a human being. Of course you're going to say, I want to have that body, or I want to have that face, or I want to have that hair, that gown, or whatever. I want that moment to pass through you because you're a person. So you'll allow those thoughts to come and hit you. And then I want those moments to be turned into gratitude of, I'm so grateful that I get to even be here to begin with, first and foremost, that I get to learn from these women, that these women are going to touch my life in either a small or a large way. And that regardless of if you win or not, isn't it just an honor? Like, isn't it just a joy and a gift to be here? Really, I mean, that's how you kind of kill comparison, is just, I think, gratitude. It's hard for gratitude and comparison to live in the same space. It's hard for them to coexist.
But it's possible.
Sure is. You can. I mean, I think you can continue to know that also there's a muscle. There's a mental muscle and a spiritual muscle that has to be built up when you're competing. And I can tell you, as a teen, that muscle was withered away. It did not exist. I was very much in the height of comparing myself to others. And the pain that it's a weight that you carry with you into a room, and judges can smell it on you. And it's a heavy, heavy weight. However, I think when you give yourself some grace and you give yourself some time, so you notice that weight is there, and you say, listen, I understand that you're here, and you're here to either protect me, or you're trying to warn me about, whatever the voice is trying to tell you. But there's space for all of us. There really is. There's room for all of us. And go back to I'm really just grateful I get to do this. I'm really just grateful that I get to be here.
You mentioned the teen program several times. So for those who aren't familiar with your history in the Miss America system, can you give us just a quick breakdown of like when you started competing, how long you were competing before you won?
Yes. So I started as early as I could. I was 13 when I first started competing. And then a little bit into my personal journey. So my mom was a single mom. And she ended up passing away when I was 15. So about 2 weeks before I competed my 3rd year. And that year was pretty impactful because the pageant community really became my family at that point. And, even foster families. So I had 5 different foster families that I lived with from 15 to 18 years old. One of them was a local director, and so it's interesting, like the system really, I felt, raised me. And so it wasn't a typical experience. It wasn't that I was just going in and having a good time. Like, I really kind of clung to it as a life raft. So it was pretty special. It was really, really special, a really special time. But it was very good at preparing me. And I think Addie also, she was Miss Oklahoma's Outstanding Teen. And that made it very easy for us to go in our rookie year and win, because we had this huge, sort of backpack of experience, and it just made it a little bit easier, I think, than an ordinary person walking off the street and coming in and trying to compete and win for the first time. That would be a lot. So
yeah. No, that the teen experience provides such a wonderful foundation. So I'm glad you both were able to utilize that and see its benefits, because I feel like a lot of our systems competitors now are using that pipeline.
Yeah.
Which is smart.
And they really should. I mean, I can't recommend it enough. I want my girls if they're interested in it, I would love for them to try it because it was really great, really beneficial. And it does tackle things like comparison. It tackles a lot of the teen issues that'll bleed into your 20s and just as a woman in general. And I think that when you're given the opportunity to attack those early on, it gets easier to manage them in your late 20s, early 30s.
Right. So you also worked extensively, as we heard, in the entertainment field. So are there any parallels between, comparison in pageant land versus entertainment land? And like, how do you navigate those even, in your adult years?
I don't want this to sound negative in any capacity. I would say it's 10,000 times worse in Los Angeles and in Hollywood than it would be in the pageant world, because pageants is so much more about female empowerment. We're all there really kind of with a common goal. We're there to be role models. So there's very little in the way that I experienced of just this toxicity that existed in Hollywood. And in Hollywood, it's like you have to be willing to sacrifice more than I'd be willing to communicate here on this.
Yeah, I get it.
There's a lot that you have to be willing to give up, and there was so much that I just was not willing to give up. So I mean, in the end, I still audition. I still have a great agent, manager. I still have a great team. I think that we just really are conscientious of the season of life that I'm in, and also that my daughters will always come first. My husband will always come first, and Hollywood is I think a lot of people have it on a pedestal. I think social media has turned it into a very different beast, and I think you have to be willing to be on 24/7.
Yeah,
and vulnerability and openness. It's challenging.
For sure. This concept of perfection, which moves me into our next point, right? The woman, the myth, the legend, the perfect pageant girl, does she exist? And that concept of perfection and attaining it. So how did you handle the pressure, whether it was competing as a teen or as competing for Miss Oklahoma or purely for Miss America, where I think it's even more heightened? How did you handle that pressure to measure up?
So I actually feel that being perfect is a really, I think that will only do you harm. If I met a perfect person, I would not necessarily feel encouraged to want to get to know them, because I am so wildly imperfect and so wildly flawed that I would have a really difficult time relating to that person. I think that pageants is the goal is to end up going and being with young children for the most part, and being a person that encourages them and uplifts them. I cannot envision how a perfect person would be able to do that job and do it well, because what are they going to uplift if they've never experienced hell and back? Like, what are they going to tell you if they've not experienced the depths of sorrow and loss and pain to their own personal degree? I think that one of the biggest things Miss Oklahoma that I came in with was I was like, hey, I have done drugs. I've been in therapy since forever. I did not stay a virgin till marriage from I was young when that occurred, and I had made a ton of mistakes. And I came into the board the day after I was crowned, and I just was like, here's everything I've ever done, good, bad, and ugly. And how are we going to use this to be able to impact other people? Because I just could not bear the thought of winning Miss Oklahoma and then going into schools and people being like, okay, like she's a pretty girl and what is she going to contribute? It was like, no, I was a girl. I wanted to talk about like surviving foster care and surviving. And as a woman, surviving high school, and I had met Christ when I was 16 years old. But before that, there was a couple of years making life-ending choices. And I wanted to talk about that because these kids are 13 to 15 years old. This is who I was talking to. So I was like, shouldn't I be telling them what I did and how I experienced life? And so perfection was the opposite of what, and I hope that no one ever thinks that that's the choice. I hope no one ever thinks that's the choice. I mean, when has that ever made anyone want to sit down with somebody and get to know them. I've never experienced that ever, and nor will I ever. So
No, because it's unattainable.
like if somebody's going in to an interview and they're like, I want to have the perfect interview, that's insane. That's insane. Who relates to that? Not a soul. So I think for me, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew the goal. I knew the why. And I was not interested in being perfect. I was interested in competing well. I'm very competitive, but I was not, I think also my mother, God bless her, raised me with an absolute delusional mindset of like, you are the queen and everyone else can be queen, but like you're the queen. My mother literally would be like, you're a 10 out of 10. What are we even talking about? And it would just be, it was ingrained in me early on. So I guess because of her, I'm so thankful God knew that I would not have her long term. So she instilled in me like on a lifelong sort of confusion about delusion and confusion about who I was. And I think it worked out. It worked out.
Oh, good. It's an extremely powerful story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I mean, obviously you've been sharing this portion of your life for a very long time, so you're comfortable with that. I'm curious, what would be your recommendation to people who have similar struggles or stories of their own and have yet to find the strength to share that?
I think everybody shares their story in their own time, and no one should be forced to share when they don't feel comfortable. But I will say this. There were so many young girls that I would go to schools and do my presentations for. And each one of them, I have distinct memories of them coming up to me and like holding on to me like they were like holding on for dear life. And just saying like, this is me. Like, this is where I'm at right now. And I'm like, isn't it good news? Like that you're gonna get out, like you're gonna get out of this and you're going to succeed, just because I think that there's somebody out here that believes that you can and knows that you can, has proof that you can. And so I think that if you're on the fence, if there's a story that's really tender, I had sexual abuse trauma early on. Sharing that took me some time. Like it took me some time because I wasn't even sure I could own it the way I needed to. And sometimes people are uncomfortable. They don't, and it's a trigger. And there's things that happen to people that is maybe not necessarily, I think that it's painful. Like you have to acknowledge that pain is an uncomfortable situation to have to address, especially in a public setting. So I would say, whether you're faithful or not, that you don't have to be, certainly don't have to be a praying person. But if you are, in a faith of some kind, prayer is really impactful on when and where, on discernment of when and where when and where it's a good time.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Great advice. Earlier you talked about that feeling, the weight, right? And so we have a term for that, actually. So comparison fatigue, everything has a label, we can assign it. But surely that mental and emotional exhaustion, experiencing that we experience when there's that constant pressure, right? To compare, to conform, to give the best performance and outcome. And it actually ends up leading to decreased confidence, which I think is fascinating, and increased anxiety and burnout. So as you were competing, did you ever experience any of those feelings of, anxiety or burnout as you were, looking across the room of 11s?
Okay, more so than in pageants, I think I experienced it as an actor because the burnout, the rejection is awful. I mean, the rejection on a daily basis where you're auditioning daily and you hear nothing back over and over and over again. And you're just like, it's, oh my goodness, that burnout is unbelievably hard. And to pretend that it's not is crazy. So if you're competing, say you're competing on a local level over and over again, and you're getting nowhere. I mean, you're not placing, like there's no feedback. That can really do something to your brain, I think. And so the biggest thing I would say is going back to your why. Like, if understanding what your why is, and I know people say that all the time, and that's just sounds like so cliche. But here's what I mean by that. You're going in and you really want to win because you really feel that this is like God's calling on your life, right? So we're gonna have Addie.
Oh God.
Can you share some about comparison fatigue a little bit?
Yeah.
Would you want to do that? I'm gonna pass this to Addie as I collect my child. I'm gonna finish the sentence, and I'm gonna pass it to Miss Oklahoma 2019-2020, Addison Price Brown. But I think that for me, the biggest thing was acknowledging that this wasn't serving me anymore, and to readjust, to reassess. And my why, as far as an actor was concerned, was like, I wanted to tell stories. Well, the good news is that I have lots of stories. Like, I've got a lot of stories to tell. So I started looking into that in a different way, and ministry was the way I wanted to maneuver that new position. And now pageants have kind of re-entered my life through ministry. So I'm going to introduce Addison Price Brown while I get my beautiful 3-year-old from the carpool lane. So here she is.
Here we go. Hi, Addie.
This is so fun. Hi, everybody. This is so great.
People didn't know they were getting a surprise guest.
I didn't know I would get to be the surprise guest today, so it makes it even more fun. I just offered to help drive carpool. Yeah, I think that to go maybe to the comparison side of things in more of a pageant specific method. Can you hear okay whenever there's...
I can. Yes, you're good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think that for me, the comparison cycle or comparison fatigue side of things a lot of times can feel overwhelming and daunting when you kind of lose your sense of self, when you lose your own purpose and your own why. I think as comparison begins to creep in, it feels really easy to have... Oh, you can hold it for a second. I'm not finished talking yet because now I'm in it. But anyway, it can feel so easy to lose your sense of self and to start to feel like you're trying to mold or manipulate or become somebody else, a different version of you. And so I feel like for me, what is kind of the regrounding is, what is my purpose? What is my why? Who do I want to be for other people? And I'm very much a perfectionist, someone that's like, I want to love on people. I want to do the best job that I can in whatever capacity, whether that's Miss Oklahoma or something else. And I think you have to get really real about, as a human, what are you actually able to do? What are like the real tangibles that you're able to accomplish? What really is there for you to be able to say, this is who I am to my core. And so for me, that looked like whenever I went into schools, I wanted to be really one-on-one with students. I wanted them to feel seen. I wanted them to feel known. In ways that maybe I didn't always feel seen or known by, a cool person, guest speaker who would come to my school. You think about so often in Oklahoma, the board will remind Miss Oklahomas that you might be the only title holder that children ever meet. And so what does that look like to you? Of who do you want them to see in yourself? And for me, I wanted them to see not just a confidence and not just a compassion and not just a kindness, but I wanted them to really feel a warmth and feel a presence of being seen and being known. And that my time wasn't a quick in and out, but it was really going to be spent meeting them where they're at. And I think then that almost can be the overflow, and it comes back into your own cup by spending time investing in the things that you love, by spending time knowing yourself and knowing what do you or who do you want to be. I think that it comes back twofold of now all of a sudden I can be so much more connected with who I need to be and what that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aww. Well, thank you so much, Addie. For our listeners who missed that, so you get 2 for 1. You get 2 Miss Oklahomas in one session. That was amazing. This has been the most wonderfully accidental surprise we could have had. Thank you so much. So yeah, we've been talking about that feeling of never enough and how you get through that. And they give you some amazing tips on how to overcome that sense of comparison and regrounding in yourself. When we look back at our presentation today and we think about it from that social media lens that is so prevalent for today's competitors, right? Scrolling endlessly or doom scrolling through social media, seeing it spiraling, and then feeling like, oh my gosh, I've got to, what do we have written here? Oh, I love this line. Your in progress moment, comparing it to someone else's version of polished, because truly they might be doing the same thing. You might see someone else's polished, but they see themselves as in progress and they're busy comparing themselves to somebody else. The cycle is endless. So breaking free of that cycle is going to give you a lot of freedom from and escape that feeling of burning out. So Kelsey, Addie, you've both already answered this question of how you break free of that. So we really appreciate that. We're going to move on to this concept of the spotlight shift, right? So when you're feeling that comparison creeping in, shifting the spotlight, you've got it on somebody else, like full headlights, brights are on. So really think more about, okay, how do I shift that spotlight back on me, the person I'm supposed to be developing? And what does that trigger teach you about, what you value, what you want to grow in? Those same things that Kelsey and Addie were talking about deepening that sense of self and the person that you want to portray. So for our listeners, I'm going to encourage you to sit down for a second and think through, like, is there someone, whether it be your own competitor at your state, a different state that you're looking to inspiration from other candidates, is there somebody who triggers you, somebody who you find yourself constantly comparing yourself to? And what is it that they are actually representing about what you want to grow in? And can you instead shift back to yourself, refocus on building that trait within yourself instead of just trying to encapsulate somebody else's version of it? So think on that, write that down for yourself for some homework. We're going to continue on with Kelsey. She's back. She's got her baby in the car. We're locked and loaded. We're going to talk now
and you'll hear some chatter, but just know that they're excited to be a part of the call as well. So
yay. Love it. So we're going to talk now about cultivating that concept of self-trust and authenticity. So Kelsey, was there ever a moment where it felt like you had that freedom and it came with owning your own uniqueness? What was that feeling like, and when did you have that self-realization?
Well, here's what I'll say. I I have an interesting personality that has been with me for a long time, and the personality is it wears a lot of hats. I was in the doctor's office yesterday, and I had the doctor. She laughed so hard that she fell over. Like, she was laughing so hard she fell over, and she was like, "Are you always like this?" And I was like, "I haven't eaten today, so maybe." I was like, I don't know. But it's just, I think that it goes back to what I said in kind of in a different way. I'll say it. I think really unapologetically being exactly who you are. And I will say this, at 20, I didn't know who that was, but I knew pieces that felt most familiar and most at home to me. And one of the things that I always go back to is, like, at Miss America, I had a very strong feeling that I was going to do well. And I was pretty confident in the sense that things just sort of fell into place. I felt like I was really driving that entire experience. It was really fun. I had more energy at the end of the time that I was there than I had less. So I felt like everything was moving and grooving. And at the end of the competition, they were calling the top 5. I was the first one to be called. And they asked me a question, and immediately I told a joke. And here's my facts. If I was Miss America, that's who they were going to get. They were going to get the girl that was going to try and turn the space into something that was more full of levity. I wasn't necessarily going to be a class clown Miss America, but I was going to be a person that was just going to be me. And I do not regret at all the choice to make a joke, to say, at the expense of Miley Cyrus. Let's just be honest. She's a queen. And I'm like, why was I did not have the perspective that I have now, but I still am grateful that I stayed true to who I was. because at the end of the day, you don't want that job if you're not going to be exactly who you are. And if you're still in the process of figuring out who that is, great. Aren't we all? But I also encourage, like, if pageants is the only thing, go make sure your hobbies are flexed, you know, make sure that you have friends that you're willing to go out and have a good time with, that you know what you enjoy. Like, if you asked me the four top five things, what am I even saying? The top five
Four of
things,
the top five.
four of the top five things. I love math. I love
That's
it.
fine. I got
Fantastic. But like my top five things, Twilight. I could talk to you about Twilight pretty much from now until I am elderly. Like, I love the series more than anything. And I think that's hysterical. I also really have a weird obsession with Shakespeare. We could go in on that, you know? And it's like, I also love every person I've ever met. I've literally never met a person I don't. Addie's like, that's true. I am obsessed with people. Like, I literally think that every person I've ever met they just have something. I can see the sparkle in every human being. I really can. And so I never meet a stranger. I love that about me. I've always loved that about me. My husband has some questions about it because he's like, can we please go somewhere on a date where you're not talking to the waiter?
To everyone.
2 minutes. But again, these are just examples of like, nope, no, absolutely not. God bless you. So I think that that's where I think if we're in a position, if we are in a place in our life where we're really still trying to figure out who exactly we are and what authenticity means to us, like, who are we authentically? That is the most exciting place you could possibly be in. You just go on that journey, sis. You just go on that journey and you chase everything that makes you feel joy, that makes you feel happy, that joy and that happiness and that thrill. If pageants, if being Miss Oklahoma is Miss America is the number one goal for you, I can assure you, you will not win it if there is not joy exuding out of your soul. So find the joy above everything else.
So I want to remind some of our listeners that when you were competing, Kelsey, the age out was 24. The age out is now 28.
Wow.
Well, I know. The feeling that you just gave me through your facial expressions is exactly how I feel about if I would have had to compete that long. The panic that just set in. But truly, we're looking at girls with a 10-year potential 10-year gap competing next to one another. So we talk about learning who you are. I think that is so much easier said for those who are in the upper age range, right? Because you've had more time to discover. So let's speak to those who are the 18, the 19, in your case, the 20-year-olds who are competing against potentially 28-year-olds. What do we say to them on, hey, you know, you're still discovering and that's okay, but that feeling of needing to feel established in comparison to an older candidate? How do you express that to the judges? Like, I'm becoming, but trust me, I know who I am, even though I'm still figuring it out.
I love this because you're talking to two Miss Oklahomas who were essentially teenagers when we won. And I mean, there were other girls that were competing with us that were respectfully more qualified, I would say. I mean, respectfully. Like, you were like, not me. I was a winner.
I was great.
But I would say, I just don't doubt, I don't doubt God's timing on things. And I also don't doubt that we are put in a place at a specific moment for a reason. I think that a 20-year-old has endless wisdom that they could give. Same way that I believe a 28-year-old is still trying to figure out exactly who they are. Like, I don't feel like you know it all at 28. In fact, I am 33. I have just now realized I don't know a single thing. I don't know anything. Not a thing. In fact, I knew far more at 20 than I knew at 33. So I would say 28. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I was living in Los Angeles. My husband and I were just struggling to make ends meet. We were like fighting for our lives out there. It was really, really, it was a tough time. And we were relying on God. There was a moment in my marriage where we went into the grocery store and we could not afford celery. It was a real moment. And I had already been Miss Oklahoma and been at Miss America. And I was like, how am I here? Like, what am I even doing? Like, what's going on? And I was 26. And it's like, wasn't this supposed to get better? And the truth is that we're fortified at different seasons. I was fortified at 15 to prepare me to be Miss Oklahoma at 20. So that then God could fortify me again in my 20s to then make me the mother I'm supposed to be in my 30s and 40s and beyond. And we're not meant to be, we are not meant to know it all. We're not meant to know it all at any season of our life. So when you're young competing, just know that you can go on less sleep and live that best life, sis. You don't need as much sleep as the 28-year-old does. So count yourself
Thrive. Ain't that the truth? You mentioned earlier, you're like, if I was to talk about branding, I wouldn't even know where to start. And, that's something that you are right is highly emphasized now to really know your branding. I think it's funny you said that. And then you went on to explain the 5 key elements of your personality, which I feel like maybe are your branding.
Well,
I feel like,
there's
maybe you do know yourself.
Like 27 personalities. So I'm like, the brand is vast. It's
Yes,
vast.
yes. You know what? Keeps it interesting. We love that. But speaking to our, contestants that are watching this, who do have to constantly be considering what is their branding, right? Something that only you bring to the table, the room, the role, and encouraging you all to go from, I wish I had this thing to, oh, I'm so proud I offer this. Highlighting what you do have to offer instead of constantly looking at what somebody else brings, and thinking of those qualities, because oftentimes you're probably overlooking some of your best attributes because you were too busy thinking about what somebody else had to give. And, Kelsey talked about the fact that she was going to be the Miss America who told a joke. So that's exactly how she showed up. And for her, that's something she's proud to offer. That's part of her personality. And, take it or leave it. Obviously, they loved you enough for you to be standing there as second runner up. So that's phenomenal. But don't overlook a lot of what you have to offer simply because you think it's not what's right for the role. You might surprise yourself.
Yeah.
Might be exactly what they wanted. So redirecting our energy, right, from comparison to what we can contribute, and focusing less on what you lack and more on what you can give. Thinking about, okay, instead of sharing my talent and there's pressure for me to have to perform this, can I flip that perspective to, oh, I'm contributing joy to this room, right? Supporting other women instead of silently maybe resenting them a little bit for the things that they bring to the table. And then celebrating growth over perfection, right? Really, really important key points. And for a moment, I want to touch on that second one, right? Supporting other women instead of silently resenting them. And I'm actually going to flip the script a little bit because, myself having been in this program for a long time, have heard a lot of women say oh, well, I don't have a sad story to share. And they silently resent the women who have been through pain and are brave enough to share it. Now, how privileged, how wonderful it must be to not have experienced extensive pain early in life to be able to speak about it, right? But I'm curious what your thoughts are. Having the background that you did, the upbringing that you did, the experiences that you did. What would you say to somebody who is sitting there going, oh, well, I don't have a story to share?
Literally, I wish Addie was sitting here still. She's giving birth in 2 days, and she took both my kids inside, so she's the real MVP. She's insane. So I'm going to talk about her for a second, because she called me before she went and competed her first year at Miss Oklahoma. She called a bunch of formers and was just asking advice. I said, listen, your parents are married. You come from, a wealthy neighborhood.
You've never lost anyone. You've never, the hardest thing you've experienced is you know, there was a little bit of a learning disability there. And, you know, that's as tough as it got. I was like, I have a feeling that there is something, I just had a feeling she was going to win. First of all, I have like weird spidey senses. I was like, there is something about you that is just undeniable. And whatever that is, that's what you share. And really at the end of the day, for Addie, knowing her as well as I do, she's one of my best friends. Now, just crazy. I feel like the luckiest person alive. She is, I'm not going to get emotional about it. I'm just going to like try and say it. She is who I want my daughters to hopefully emulate. I would never wish on anyone in their, I don't have any enemies really, but like, I wouldn't wish anyone to have a story of heartbreak and sorrow and pain. But I have specifically altered my whole life so that my daughters they are free of as much pain as I can control. And I am as close to Addie as I can be because I really want them to end up like her. And I was like, if I was judging this pageant, it's not about who survived the worst part of themselves. It's, can I see somebody being a role model for my daughters? And she is that to a T. She's that to a T. I mean, that's who she is. She doesn't have to overcome foster care in order to be an overcomer. She doesn't have to be, you know, bullied relentlessly in school. I mean, she was homecoming queen, let's be honest, but she doesn't have to be bullied in school to understand what loneliness feels like. She doesn't have to, she's a human. She's experienced all of those things. She just happens to have a heck of a lot more grace than I have. And she has a lot more, there's a lot more peace in her soul. So yeah, I'm going to crown that girl. Probably more than I'm going to crown this girl. Like, I love this girl. I love me. But like, I would crown her over me only because the peace she walks in, the knowledge she walks in, the wisdom she has, that's hers. That's because she's just who she is. And it's so, when people say you are enough, that's what I mean, is like, she's just had a beautiful life and she owns it. And it's awesome. And I want my daughters to have a beautiful life, just like her, you know, and I need an example of who that is. So I think that if you're a person listening to this and you're like, I don't have a story, thank God. Like, aren't you so blessed? And shouldn't you take that into the interview room and on stage that like, oh, I'm so blessed. Like, look at my life. Like, joy is so intoxicating. It's intoxicating. And it's just, I don't know why we don't own that more. Like, I certainly am not a victim to my situation. I just love to talk about how we can do anything. We're strong enough to do it all, you know? And I'm friends with people that that show that to me in return.
Wow. Thank you so much. And then another testament to how glad I am that we have this happy coincidence of having Addie be an equal part of this presentation.
She's truly the best
Because,
person I know.
yeah, clearly she's a wonderful, wonderful person. I am so glad you shared that, and that listeners can take away that feeling of whether you have that, you know, that heartbreak or resilience builder or not, that, you know what, you both became Miss Oklahoma. One is not better than the other. You don't have to compare yourself to people who don't have the same life experience as you, but instead looking at it through that other lens. What is it that I have to offer? It's not about me not being this person or this story. And this goes back to the beginning. It's not about that concept of the perfect pageant girl. For some people, maybe the perfect pageant girl has a difficult story to share, but for others, maybe she is just a person of complete joy who helps inspire others to find that within themselves. And again, one is not better than the other. Isn't that the beauty of this system, is that we are able to find so many women in the pocket of their life where they can be the best version of themselves at that moment, and that doesn't have to look the same.
Yeah.
So that's so wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. We've made it towards the end of our presentation. We've got some key takeaways I want to share from what we've talked about today, right? So admiring someone else while still being able to believe in yourself, understanding that comparison isn't really about them. It's about clarity for yourself and what you have to offer. Thinking about that concept of authenticity, of joy being magnetic, and instead of just trying to match someone else, because it truly just dulls your shine. And then thinking about where you place your energy and how it defines your experience while competing in this system. And one I didn't have written down in our presentation, but I wrote down myself because you said it and it was so powerful. We are fortified in different seasons, and we're never meant to know it all.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Yes.
that one, you said that, I was like, where's my pen? That was so good. You should write it down, quote it. So we brought ourselves to a Q&A time, and we actually have a listener who did have a question for you, and it's a really, really good one. So I'm excited to read it. And she says, how do you balance sharing your story while keeping it real with the judges without scaring them away? Like, how do you share without making them feel like your interview is just trauma dumping? I still haven't found the perfect balance of put together pageant girl and I'm just me.
Well, we talked about this a little bit, right? So, number one, it comes to timing. Where are you at in your journey with it? Where are you at in your healing journey with it? If it's new and it's fresh and it's a wound that's open, that might take some time to cultivate how you want to tell that story. And I would practice talking to other people about it. I mean, I would not wait until the interview moment to test that out, right? But I would say that's the first thing, is to check in on timing. Like, what does that feel like for you? And then the next thing is that I don't love the toxic positivity moment. I don't love that. I think turning something positive when clearly it's painful is not always helpful. However, I do think that you, again, go back to your why and understand, why am I even doing this? If it's about you being heard, that may not necessarily, it would not be my reason, right? Like, I would not want to go into pageants for people to hear me. I would want to win a pageant, or to go into this world, and especially going into interview. There's community. It's a push and pull. It's a give and take. So when you're going into interview to tell your story, there's a way that you were in foster care without talking about, and one of my foster families did X. It's like, sometimes you just don't need to go into the weeds of it, because we're getting the picture of the details. I was sexually abused when I was 6. That's the sentence. That really, if I'm being clear and clean and clear sort of coaching skills, the one sentence says everything. But how you go about your journey after you have said that is really what's going to sell you as a winner, as their choice, as a person they trust. Because let's say sexually abused at 6, it was extraordinary for me to be away from my mom, and yet that really built a connection between her and I that still holds even after her passing. Like, that was a really traumatizing experience, but it brought me closer to my mom, and it held me closer to her, and it feels like she's still with me today, even though she's not, and like, it kind of brings in, I'm not trying to be positive, toxic positivity, but I'm just letting you know how it then turned into something that actually was really beautiful. How a terrible thing God can always turn something awful into something really beautiful. There's so many scriptural evidence, so much scripture that can point back to that on, we're talking about Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, the musical, and how this man was thrown into slavery by his brothers who were jealous of him. He went to prison because he was framed. His life is on the line multiple times over. And yet God just continues to weave his story with a golden thread and puts him at a place of prominence because God is good. He is good. And so I think depending on where you're at, depending on how healed we are in our story, sharing it is not the issue. Telling people is not the problem. It's, can they tell that you're healed, and can they tell that you are ready to steward others, to shepherd others through their healing journey? Because that's really the goal. So I guess, I hope that answered the question. Does that make sense?
I think you went above and beyond answering it. That was stunning. Thank you so much. Look at you, still making an impact.
I told a joke. Doesn't it make you question at Miss America? It's couldn't she have just answered the question? And I'm like, no. Because at the end of the day, it's they need to know. They need to know who they're getting. You're welcome. You're so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for even putting a question there in the first place. I love that.
Our listener says, yes, wow, thank you so much.
Well, I think, listen, that's another beautiful thing. We don't have to tell our story if we don't feel that it's just trusting. We have so much to bring. We have so much to contribute. So much to, and one thing I wanted to touch on, something you talked about with comparison. This is a real hot take, and not everybody's going to agree. My fuel in comparison hits is to love somebody. It's a sign for me. If somebody's a trigger, it's a sign for me to love them harder, because I'm jealous of them, so I gotta become them, so we gotta be besties. That's the rule in my mind. I'm if I'm jealous of something they've got, then maybe we need to be close, because then maybe they'll share some with me. I think that's the if we don't have that mentality. Come on, it isn't. And then I know that I was told this back in the day so many times. They're you're not here to win Miss Congeniality, and I said, who? Says who? What if we walked away with all the friends and we have 20,000, bridesmaids? We won. So
we won. Yes,
we won
different perspective, but we appreciate that 100%. Well, Kelsey, we want to say thank you so much for being here with us today, for sharing your knowledge, for being adaptable, for making it happen and work. And you truly did go above and beyond in helping a lot of our competitors. I know for those of you who are listening in real time, obviously great takeaways. For those of you who are listening after the fact, isn't she stunning? Wonderful. So we're so thankful. Oh, yes. Well, we'll get you out of that hot car. Listeners, thank you so much for coming to another masterclass with She Is Motivated. Remember to stay booked and busy. We appreciate you being here. Look out for our upcoming sessions. And we are so thankful for you choosing She Is Motivated to help you on your journey and your preparation towards your goals. So let's give another warm welcome and not welcome, but a big thank you to Kelsey. And we'll see you all again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Autumn. Thank you.
Yes.